This is where we're at with the kitchen now. So things are definitely getting deeper, both literally and figuratively. But while we were working on this weekend, several things occurred to me, with the first one being where us DIYers can truly save money, and that's on labor. I spent Labor Day weekend in here working, and my dad was here. He did more than I did, I think. My niece's husband, he stopped by one day. He was a big help, and we just worked. All right, tearing out the floor for the kitchen. And this started off, I was not planning on tearing out the floor. There was an old tile down on top of the subfloor, if you want to call it that. All right, so I started with getting the old tile off, and got it off in squares, and well, it had plywood under it. Okay, got the plywood up. Well, that brought me down to the next layer of tile. All right, well, that next layer of tile was some old stuff, and it had tar paper under it. Okay, it was down. And then I realized the subfloor, which through the rest of the house is the actual floors, tongue and groove pine floor. Throughout the rest of the house, besides the living room and kitchen, there was no subfloor. That was it. Okay, well, when I got down to the tongue and groove pine, right below that last layer of tile, it was covered in tar. And I just realized there's no way I was ever getting the tar off of that pine, so I might as well just pull it up and then I'd go back with plywood in here. Okay, well, with the floor out, that just left us free to do all sorts of other things. That pulling out old drain line, water lines, telephone cables, old telephone cables under here, hangers, you name it, it was under here. What you would expect under an old house. All kind of disconnected, no longer used stuff. Well, then that put us into, okay, we're going to brace up the floor, so we started working on it. And let me show you what we've got with that. I said in the previous video, this house used pier and beams for the foundation to support everything. And in between the brick piers, there were also some beams to provide some rigidity to the floor and some support. Okay, and that's what this beam here is for. Well, the beam that was here, it wasn't in good shape, and it wasn't providing any support. Okay, so we went ahead and redid this, and then we put new 4x4s under it, put new cement block down. I did a lot of work there. Okay, and got the floor in really good shape. It's really solid now. We've got it pretty well leveled up. Well, that's a lot of work, and it took a lot of time. And just to get to this level was a lot of work and a lot of time. The floor followed us every bit of the way. I mean, it was tough. All of the screw heads holding down one of the layers of plywood filled with tar. You couldn't see half the screw heads. And then you had tar underneath it. It stuck. So yeah, it was a lot of work to all of this. But there wasn't much expense. Now, if I'd brought a crew in here to do this, or had a contractor do it, there would have been a lot of expense. And rightfully so, they'd have put a lot of work into it, a lot of time. Whereas by me doing this, and my dad helping, and my niece's husband helping us out, we could get in here, take our time, just enjoy each other's company, and just get some, tear this out, which is what we did. Okay, well, that didn't cost us nothing but time and work. And the beam, okay, bought a new beam to go across here. That wasn't much. Bought some new concrete blocks to put the supports on. That wasn't much. I got less than $100 in the material so far, and that was with picking up some extra stuff we needed. Okay, what do you think it would have costed to brought a contractor in here and had them do that to get it to this point? And most contractors don't even want to fool with this part. Contractors, they're there to get it done. They've got skilled people working for them, and that's why their people earn the money they make. They have skills. All right, well, this didn't require much skill. This was just work. All right, well, that's one place we can really save some money on DIY projects is the stuff we can't tackle, leave it for the professionals. For the stuff that we can do that just requires some work and some time and some labor, Well, we can do that, and that can save us a fortune. Again, I wouldn't even want to guess what just getting to this point would have cost me. And now just slap down 5 or 6 sheets of plywood on top of this, and I've got a subfloor again. I mean, I end up with what, I don't know, $100, a couple $100 in plywood, just depending on what I get. So, yeah, I just thought that's something worth sharing with everybody. And another thing I picked up out of this, or learned out of this for myself, for us do-it-yourselfers, time is our friend. Okay, I'm not a professional carpenter or anything like that. I mean, I got a little basic understanding of what's going on and done a little woodworking in the past, but I'm certainly not a professional. All right, I'm figuring this out as I go. What time's my friend in being able to look at this and figure it out? And a great example is the floor joists here. These floor joists are true 2x8 floor joists. They're rough cut, so actual dimension. They're old. And when these were cut, they were cut with circular saw blade at the mill. You could see the saw marks in the side of the board, and that's how I know that. And it wasn't a bandsaw. Bandsaw, I think, usually comes out with a straighter cut. But anyway, so there's a lot of variation in the width of these boards. Well, that's pretty tough when you're trying to level up the top of the boards to get a flat floor. All right, well, one of the things we noticed when we tore out the floor is they've got a ledger board right here. Okay, so they notched out the 2x8s here. They went down 4 inches, made a cut so that these would be able to sit on top of the ledger board. And what they did is they measured from the top of the board down 4 inches. And not just this board, but all of the floor joists, they measured down from the top. Well, then when you put the joists on top of this ledger board, they're all the same height then. It doesn't matter about the variation in the width of the board. It doesn't matter if it's 8 inches, 8 1/4, 7 1/2. You come out with the top flat all the way across. Okay, well, hey, I thought that was pretty smart of them. Which they knew what they were doing back then, building stuff. They knew what they had to work with and how to make it work. All right, well, I didn't know, as is often the case. But then having the time to actually be able to stop and look at what was going on here, that's when I realized what they were doing. So I'm learning. Okay, that's what I meant by time as our friend. If I'd been in a hurry, if I'd been rushing, that type thing, I would have never figured that out. I wouldn't have learned that. Okay, and then that helped me as far as figuring out what to do with that beam across the center, because there was some sag in the floor. Well, now I'm going to work on getting that out. And what we're going to do is we're going to put wedges where they need to be. But one other thing I could have done, which I didn't think about until after the fact, I could have measured from the top down 8 inches or however far, whatever the shortest board is, or the narrowest. All right, so 7 3/4. I could measure 7 3/4 off all of the boards, cut out a slot for the beam so that it sits on top of it, and then across the middle, all I would have to do is get the beam level, and then the tops would have came out the same on all of them then, because it'd be measuring from the top. Now I've got my laser level here, and it's on a tripod. I got it set down. Okay, now I've got a level line all the way around, 360 degrees. I can take a tape measure, put it on the joist, and see exactly what it's measuring. Okay. The number's irrelevant. The measurement itself is irrelevant. It's just, happens to be from the top of the joist to wherever the laser happens to be. Right. But I can go through for every joist, take a measurement, and that's what I'm about to do now, is measure them all in 3 places. Measure on each end and in the middle for every joist. Write it all down. And then I can see exactly what I've got with the floor here, and come back and make adjustments as needed. If I end up way too high on one side, okay, maybe we need to shorten the post that it's sitting on, drop it down a little bit, which we used to level as we were going, and I know it's pretty close. Okay, any joists that happen to be really low, we can shim those up. We can make adjustments. All right, and that's what we're going to do with the rest of the house. the parts that the flooring is still there, because those have beam issues also and some sagging and weakness. What really doesn't matter what the joists are doing is what the floor is doing. As long as it's solid and flat, level, it's good. All right, so we're going to do the same thing in the morning. Break out the laser and tape measure, go around, get all the measurements, see where our low spots are, high spots, so on, and make adjustments accordingly. None of this is that complicated. It might seem a little overwhelming when you first tear out the floor and you're looking at the dirt inside the house, but that's what having time does. It lets us think about these things and figure it out and realize, well, hey, it really ain't that bad. And then hopefully this weekend I'm going to get the plywood back on the floor here in the kitchen, get this done, move on to the other areas. Progress. Okay, I got my numbers, and hey, that floor is looking pretty good. A few wedges, this is going to be good for however many more decades. All right, but that's the thing, it's going to be good for however many more decades. Okay, well, stuff like this, because it lasts for so long, usually when us DIYers jump in on a project like this, if we do it right, it's going to be our first time usually and our last time. All right, that floor again being good for however many decades. I'm not going to be here the next time it needs to be worked on if I did it right. Okay, well, as a result of things like this usually being our first time and last time, we don't really know what we're getting into until we get into it. All right, so we don't know enough to even know we don't know till we start. Have a backup plan. Okay, if you're going to jump on a big project, be prepared to bring in a contractor if you need to. Have that as part of your backup plan. Okay, and if you get most of the labor-intensive stuff out of the way, you still cut your costs significantly if you bring in a contractor. But odds are, if you take your time and really think about what's going on, don't get impatient, don't feel overwhelmed, and just accept, hey, time's my friend, and it's going to take however long it takes. If you have that mindset, you're probably going to figure it out and get it right. And there's a good chance you might do a better job than a contractor. All right. A contractor had done the beams under here that I'm redoing now. Okay, I hope that helps some of you out, gives you a little confidence and a little different perspective on time. God bless and have a great day.